Shaq, Stephen A. says hello. Greeny is here. Thank you very much for doing this morning. We appreciate you taking a minute. And I'm going to let you dive right into this conversation because you played against Michael at his best. We just showed a stat. Yours was the last team to ever beat him in a playoff series. How would you envision, what would Michael Jordan be if he played in the game today the way the game is different from the way it was in his era?
He'd average 45, and the league would be complaining about two players. It'd be like, Mike is too good. And the kid named Shaq down in Orlando was too dominant. What are we going to do?
What do you think, Steve? Go ahead.
I agree with him. I definitely agree with him. Listen, go ahead, Shaq.
Who is that?
That's Stephen A. Smith. That's a name you
It's
probably
me,
know.
man. Don't act like you don't know it's me. You know it's me, man. What's going on?
Where you been at, man? I miss you, brother.
I missed you too, bro. But definitely, Greeny, Shaq would have been most dominant. No question. Shaq was the most dominant force that I saw in the modern era, and Michael Jordan would have been the best player without question. And the difference between a Michael Jordan compared to a James Harden, we're not thinking about defense because we know there's no comparison there. But offensively, even though James Harden is incredibly dominant, the amount of dribbles that he utilizes with the basketball, Michael Jordan would not have handled it that way. He would have been much more in attack mode with considerably less dribbling of the basketball.
Shaq, let me ask you this. Earlier this week, and it got a lot of attention, and Stephen A. weighed in pretty strongly on it here, Mark Jackson said on the air that players of the era in which Michael was at his apex, when you first came into the league, were cut from a different cloth than the players are today. When you hear that, as one who is still around the game as much as you are, what do you think?
There's some truth to that, and I didn't realize that. Kenny Smith said something on the show one day. He said, we are all products of our environment. So I was like, what are you talking about, Kenny? Because, you know, Kenny likes to babble. And when he broke it down, it made sense. He said, okay, when he was growing up, he was watching guys like Tiny Archibald, how they played. So, you know, he developed his game after that. When I was growing up, I was watching Patrick Ewing, Ronnie Cycli, guys like that in the middle. They played hard. They played tough. I was watching the bad boys. So I patterned my game after that. So then when I came in and started beating these centers up and everybody wanted to pick and pop, that's when you got guys like Dirk and KG and even Kevin Duncan. So the guys that are playing now, they didn't watch me. They watched Duncan and guys like Dirk, guys that step out. And that's why they play the way that they play. Like even when I'm working out with my son, I want to be like, bang him out, bang him out, bang him out. But that's not how they play anymore. So I allowed him to go out and, work on the face-up jumper, work on the James Harden side, set three-pointer, all that stuff, because he's a product of his environment. The guys that he's watching in the NBA, this is what they do. So it really is some truth to what Mark Jackson said.
Steve?
He's absolutely right. I mean, definitely you're a product of your environment. There's no question about it. And the folks that you watched up emulating ultimately is what you grab a hold of, and you take that to another level. Connie Hawkins came before Dr. J. Julius Erving, along with David Thompson, by the way. And then after Dr. J. Julius Erving, here comes MJ. Well, what would MJ have had to emulate? As great as he was, as phenomenal as he was, it was taken to another level by and large because of the people who preceded him, the Dr. J's, David Thompson's, Connie Hawkins, and guys like that. When we think about Steph Curry, well, guess what? He had his father before him. Oh, by the way, there was the Dale Ellises of the world. Later on, it was Ray Allen. Back in the Dale Ellis days, along with Mr. Curry himself, you also had guys like Ricky Pierce. Remember downtown Freddie Brown from the Seattle Supersonics in the 1970s, or in the late 70s, early 80s. All of those things are byproduct. You peel from that to learn what greatness to emulate and ascend towards by virtue of those who came before you.
Stephen A., thanks a million for jumping in. I have to let you go to get ready for your show, and I have one more question. So again, First Take is coming up in a few minutes. And Shaq, I'll just have one more question for you, because as we have done Last Dance here, it's gotten so many people talking about the game and its historical place with Michael Jordan. So I guess I would just simply ask you, for those who've never heard your opinion, if I say Shaq, who's the greatest player ever? What is the answer?
I'm going to have to say Michael Jordan.
And why would you put Michael first?
Because, Michael paved the way for all the great guys we have now. And 6-0 in the finals, without a legitimate big man, went through a lot, took a year off, came back and won 3 more in a row. He's definitely the greatest player. And I think if you ask, the other guys that are brought up, I'm sure that they will say it too. Scottie Pippen made a great point. You can't say I'm the greatest player. You have to let your peers and everyone else say who the greatest player is.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.